we're talking about modernizing applications, which kind of makes sense because there's an awful lot more software that's been written and is going to be written this year, right? There's a lot of existing code and systems that are out there that have value. But we've also kind of got this looming specter of Gen AI and how it's going to transform how we build software. Do you kind of have views on what the opportunities are to use generative AI to help modernize applications?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of funny because when I step into the mix, when people are talking online about this, it seems like most people are just basically talking about writing new applications or rewriting them using AI, right? And I've concentrated an awful lot more on like the refactoring end of things, and also how do you interact as a human with AI in order to go and be more effective. I think the thing that I'm kind of like centering in now that I think a lot of people are missing is that review fatigue is a very big deal. It's like when you have something generated for you, you're just basically put into that position again of like, okay, I have to understand this from scratch. And it's, it doesn't take too long before you start getting like really worn out going and doing that sort of thing. And I think to the degree that people sort of like work with AI as a conversation, they're able to go and sort of like, change the scope and change the questions that they ask and stuff like that to go and sort of keep themselves engaged. And it's important to basically not see it as a normal tool where you put something in and you get something out. You basically have to interact with it, and basically it can approach things at just about any level that you want to. So it's like, I guess having that frame is the most important thing, that I've seen recently.
We actually had a question here from RM saying, what trend do you see in AI for lowering technical debt? I think we'll come back to that more broadly in a moment, but that thing you talk about with reviewing is important, right? Because one of the ways in which some kind of code review process can be really positive is in helping ensure that the code we write is the code that we want, providing feedback to improve a developer and the code they write, making sure it fits with the local idioms and everything else. And I'm a big fan of pair programming, so I'd always just be doing inline code review anyway. But I've definitely seen the benefit of that. And I can certainly, but I've also worked in organizations where that code review process has become entirely a tick box exercise.
Yeah.
Because people either don't see the value or don't have the time. So for me, the idea of having like a sort of a smarter, an AI agent I can chat to about this piece of code that can go beyond and I can explore, that seems like a really positive potential in terms of improving code quality through improving the review process.
Yeah.
Do you think we have those things now, or are we still kind of these? Because I guess the big question I've got, it goes a lot across a lot of what we can talk about throughout today's event, is the things which are practical today versus the things which are theoretical. So kind of the things that you're seeing in that very specific, that kind of practical today things that you think are useful for people in this area?
Yeah, sure. So what I'm basically seeing is that it really pays to go and do things at a micro level. Like, okay, here's a snippet of code. Can you simplify this for me? Or can you tell me about how this could be optimized? Various different things like that. As the scope widens out, it seems like you get into that review fatigue area, but also the point at which you're not able to go and really evaluate whether what you have is correct or not, right? So I find that it's kind of cool to go and handle things at that micro level, like a very small scope, but then also step back and just basically use AI for ideation. So many people are just like so keen on going and like using AI to refactor very big pieces of code or rewrite big pieces of code or generate new big pieces of code. But you can actually have that separation point where you say, okay, I'm going to go and ask a question. I'll give it some code and say, give me a different approach for this. And that doesn't mean that you have to go and take that code and paste it into your application. You use that as a starting board in order to go and actually figure out the direction you might want to go and take things in. And I think that's something that I really find is very useful in my practice. The ability to go and very quickly get different perspectives on the thing I'm working on. And that really puts us, there's a responsibility for us there, because you can ask a question and get a very quick answer. But like if you ask the question twice, you'll get different answers. So we have to learn not to be so attached to the very first response that we receive with these things. Essentially, brainstorming is free now. That's what it comes down to.
It's kind of interesting that thing you talk about, that having the conversation with it, you're using it for exploration, for understanding, but that kind of does imply that you're in a position to be able to understand what it's giving you. And that seems to be one of the concerns that people have got, which is people are just going to use GenAI to write code and then just run it without knowing how it works. It being one step removed from copying and pasting from Stack Overflow, right? Just much more specific. And it's interesting because my son is now working at a company where, and this again does age me, my son's now working at a company where he isn't the junior programmer. And they've made a rule, they're a small startup, but they've got a rule where the more junior staff people there don't use Gen AI for code generation because they want them to understand what these code generation things are going to do. And so they're kind of being a bit more restrictive. And it's actually the more senior or the more experienced technologists in that company that are making use of these things because they kind of understand the constraints. So I guess maybe if we look at that more junior end, I mean, this thing that I think you've seen that I've seen as well, which is I'm going to use this Gen AI bot to just write my code for me. Do you see that as improving the situation we're in? Do you think that's going to help reduce legacy code over time? Or...
No, I think it's a very significant problem, the thing you're outlining with that. And I've heard a number of people talk about how this is great for juniors, and great for seniors, but people in the middle, it's kind of like there's this real trap that they can kind of get into, So yeah, I think people can generate things, but they can also generate beyond their capability to understand, as you mentioned earlier. And that's when you really get into trouble. And then you're basically using AI to go and try to understand or explain to you the thing that it just did. And you can get into this area where things just start to go and sort of spiral out of control. I think the thing that I feel positive about is that essentially it's easy to basically use AI to sort of generate tutorials for yourself to go and learn things in depth. The thing I've kind of centered on with this is that essentially AI is good for us to the degree that we're able to go and ask better questions. If you can ask better questions, you'll get better results. And that requires a certain foundation of software engineering knowledge. So you have that, but also it's kind of like, it seems like as well, it's kind of like AI is a great tool for learning how to ask better questions. You just have to be open to it. So I think that's the big thing for us right now is to go and figure out, at what phases it's very useful for people in different parts of their career. And how do we basically go ahead and, bring everybody along that we can, to go and make them more effective at whatever level they happen to be at.